Hello, 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 and welcome to Relationship Rhetoric. I'm your host, Unapologetically Angela. Thank you so much for joining me on another terrific Thursday. I am super, super excited this week because I finally found a couple. I love to talk to singles. I love to just talk to people who strike my curiosity. But my heart and my passion and my reason for starting this show is because I love to talk to couples and I really love to find out their love story. But also, I'm very curious about how they make the day-to-day work. How do they handle their conflicts? What are their favorite memories? I don't know if a lot of you know this, but I started this show as a result of my divorce, and I needed that therapy because I'm a hopeless romantic. And being able to talk to couples and see that there are relationships that thrive, that are in it till death do us part. And just hearing those stories and actually talking to couples, young and old, and they're sharing their amazing stories, and not all of them are, just this crystal stair story. There have been some struggles, there have been some traumas, but they have decided and made it their commitment to actually stay together. And so I work with this young lady, and we had an opportunity to just share information. And she shared her love story about her and her husband. And I just thought it was beautiful, and it's so rich to me because in this day and age, the way of the world and the way that the world is going, I just had to hear it. And I feel like it's a story that needs to be shared because there are so many, again, couples out here who have such a wholesome story that is built on the word of God, and they're proud of it. And I love it because we don't see that. We see so much hoopla and other things and taboos, and things are over sexualized. So to have a couple who are young and really out here trying to do the thing, I'm really excited to hear their story. So ladies and gentlemen, let's meet Mr. and Mrs. Johnson.
Hey,
Hi.
Angela.
Well, again, thank you so much. Like I said, I count it a great honor to be able to talk to couples. It's really, really interesting because a lot of people choose not to discuss their relationships and not to share what's going on in their lives. So I do not take it for granted that you all agreed, both of you agreed to actually be on the show. So thank you so much. I would like to start with just you individually. If you would tell me where you're from, did you grow up in Memphis, and what was going on in your life before you met each other?
Do you want to go first?
Sure. So hi everyone. My name is Kerry Johnson. I would say I'm from Memphis, but people who are from Memphis usually tell me I'm not. I grew up the vast majority of my life around Collierville and Germantown. And then after my parents divorced, I grew up in Raleigh with my mom. We stay with my aunt for quite a bit of time, like late middle school to my junior year of high school, and then I ended up moving back with my dad um in a different part of like Southwind area. And so yeah, just normal kid. I was the only child. Um Very awkward, didn't really fit in. But yeah, just I love tennis. I played tennis as a kid. That was my thing. And went to the University of Memphis, studied economics, international studies, and that's where I met Julia.
Okay.
So I'm from South Haven, Mississippi, um, just down the street. And I met Carrie, like he said, at the University of Memphis. I believe it was our freshman year of college. I had embedded myself in a college ministry at the University of Memphis. Um, and we met each other on a retreat.
That's Angela. See, she already messing up.
Okay, come on,
She's
Carrie.
not.
Get it right.
She's
Get
not
it right. I love it.
owning. She's not owning a specific piece of history regarding this relationship. So I actually met Julia. The first time was there's this guy that was like kind of mentoring me, or he was kind of helping me out around school, and so he took me to a fish fry that a couple of other people, like another guy, was hosting at his house, and it was packed. And I met Julia that one night, and I was like, "Oh, she's really cute." And then I remember talking to the guy about it, and he kind of knew Julia. And so then I remember Julia from then. We had talked that night, but Julia didn't remember me from the fish fry. So I'm just saying the first time, I say all that to say the first time we met was not at a spring retreat. It was actually at this guy's fish fry that we first met, and she just continues to, look past that point.
Look past the fish. Come on, Julie, the fish fry is important.
Right, exactly.
I don't remember him.
See, that's all I'm saying, Angela. I just want her to own it. I'm not mad. Just want her to own it.
Okay, so Julia, so I'm gonna go prior to the fish fry. Mm-hmm. Have you always been a person who was connected to the church and looking for a ministry to participate in at even younger?
Yes. So my mom, growing up, my mom and my uncle shared the gospel with me at a young age and helped me set boundaries and parameters throughout my life prior to college. Now, did I always abide by those guidelines and boundaries? Of course not. But my senior year of high school, I gave my life to the Lord. And so I knew going into college that I wanted to be a part of a ministry and that I needed community. And so my family and I were attending a church here in Memphis, and my mom noticed college students that sat in a certain area. And so I reached out to the college minister, and they pointed me to this college ministry called Campus Outreach.
Okay. So the same question for you, Carrie. Were you part of a, religious family that was really connected to church and ministry?
Yeah, I actually grew up in church. I'm a PK. For those that don't know what a PK is, that's a preacher's kid, and we usually have the worst reputations. But yeah, I grew up in church my whole life. Everybody on my father's side, I have an aunt that's a minister. My dad, of course, was a minister. My grandfather, grew up in church for the vast majority of my life. But I would say the person who kind of introduced me to, really kind of helped me with understanding, what it means to walk with the Lord was really my mom. I was closer to my mom than my dad. And once they divorced, she kept us in church. She grew up in church. And so I was part of youth ministries and things of that nature, even once my parents divorced and stuff like that. So, before college, I was involved in ministries and stuff. I was very awkward, so it doesn't mean that I always wanted to be holy or Christian. I just didn't get the option because I was just an awkward kid. So I really wasn't going to parties because I just wasn't popular. But but yeah, that's kind of my journey before college.
Okay, so was this fish fry a ministry related event?
Yeah, it was. It was. It was a guy who had been involved in the ministry for a minute, and it was like the way to kick off the school year. That year, they decided to have a fish fry to kind of invite freshmen to kind of get them involved into the ministry early. So yeah.
Okay. All right. Okay. Very nice. Very nice. Okay. So Julia, tell me about this retreat.
So it was a weekend in, I think it was Jackson, Tennessee.
Yeah.
I rode down with some people. And during the retreat, we usually had breakout sessions of time that allowed us to grow spiritually. And one of those days we were there, I think we went to a mall. And a part of this retreat is introducing you to what they have. It's called a summer project, where you spend 10 weeks in Orlando, Florida. You work at one of the theme parks, and when you're not at work, you're being discipled by someone of the same sex, and you're living with 3 or 4 people in a hotel room. Really crazy time. But that retreat was basically to get you fired up for the Orlando project. And so I remember us being at the mall, me and my best friend, and I met Carrie. And I think the first thing I asked was was he going to the Orlando project? And so that was one of our first conversations that I can recall.
So Carrie, does that sound about right?
Yeah, that's about right for the spring retreat.
Okay.
She got that account accurate.
Okay, so I want to hear your perspective. You were going to the retreat, so you were going on this summer project as well?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Once again, the guy that I kind of met earlier when during my freshman year, he was a part of this ministry that we're talking about, and he was telling me about all these events. And so one of the events in the lineup during that year was a spring retreat, and I ended up going along, and just a great way to connect with other kids, especially for someone who doesn't make friends easily. And so yeah, I just kind of found myself there in the mix of all of it.
Okay. So with you using the term that you were not popular or socially awkward, did it make you uncomfortable, Julia, talking to you or engaging in conversation with you?
No, I don't. I don't think it made me feel awkward at that time because it was her and her best friend, and I think at that time we maybe encountered each other like maybe once or twice before, like one of their evening events or something like that. So I kind of knew them from that. So even though we weren't completely familiar with one another, talking to the two of them at the time, I was just kind of like, okay, cool, it's whatever. We're just hanging out at the mall. So
I never saw him as awkward, socially awkward, or shy.
Really?
Mm-mm.
Okay. Okay. So now, Julia, in all of this, and you having these little passing conversations with him, are you having these passing conversations because there's an attraction there, or are you just being social?
I think at that point it was still social, but then we fast forward to being on the summer project. And that's when I got to see more of his character and get to know him more. And that's when I was like, yeah, I'm interested.
Okay, so Carrie, could you tell when the shift happened?
No. Like I said, in high school, I didn't date. In high school. I always had I had two best friends that were girls in high school, and they were really just cool with me. I never tried to date either one of them. And so I just kind of felt like this was kind of like a similar situation where I was getting cool with another cool young Black woman, which is what I was used to. Most of my friends in high school that I did have were young Black. And so I just felt like, oh, okay, this is a similar kind of ordeal. I honestly, I was completely oblivious to it.
And there were also other girls that liked Carrie, and he was completely oblivious to it. I don't know.
It was just very new. I was just like, oh, word? Okay, I didn't know.
Okay, so when did the light bulb come on? What happened that made you say, oh, okay?
I think for me, I just actually started to feel attracted to Julia and like Julia. And I think we would just start hanging out more. Like she said, we would be at this Orlando project. So a lot of the time, like we would be outside and, we could just chill and talk. And just from our conversations, I was starting to see like, oh, okay, she's really cool. Like she's already pretty. I noticed that, but I really wasn't thinking about that, I guess, during this time. And then we just consistently keep talking, or we would see each other at work. Like she said, we were working these jobs. So even though she worked at a different spot, it's like all of it's in passing. So I think over time you just kind of I started realizing I was attracted to her, and I guess I kind of noticed flirting at that point. But yeah, that's kind of like how it went from my side.
So Julia, what does flirting look like?
I don't know. I don't know if it was flirting per se, but I noticed that I spent more time with Carrie than I did other people of the opposite sex while on project.
I would agree to that.
Carrie and I's room were right next to each other. And I was one of the few people from our campus that drove to Orlando project. So we would do a lot of things in groups. Mm-hmm. And so I would be the one driving and people would pile into the car, and we'd go find stuff to do on like our off days. So I think just noticing that I'm spending more time with this person than other people, and us getting to our conversations looked different. I really wanted to get to know who he was and his character. So it wasn't always just like jokes and giggles like it would have been with the other guys I was getting to
I think
know.
the thing about it is like, yeah, I agree. It wasn't flirting because I just don't have game. So like, it really just was what it was. Like, I was like, oh, okay. Yeah, like I kind of realized we were spending more time together and I became attracted during our conversations that went beyond like, oh, what song do you like? Or, you know, what are you majoring in when you go to college? And I started knowing more and more about her character and stuff like this. So yeah, I think I'd agree with that as well. Just kind of like realizing the amount of time that we were spending together, being in proximity by each other, engaging with one another, kind of like led to me being like, oh, okay, cool, more here.
Yeah, I remember one morning we went to breakfast. It was the two of us and one of our other friends, and Carrie bought my breakfast. So to me, I was like, he bought my breakfast. He might actually like me. I ain't seen him buy no food for nobody else.
The light bulb was on then, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I like it. Okay, so he's purchased breakfast. At what point do you all have a conversation about I guess dating?
Mm-hmm.
So there were a couple of conversations, I think, because there were moments when I would, after that breakfast, I thought there were moments that I would question if he liked me or not. I remember one time we said we were going to get dinner. I'm thinking it's a little date. So I'm cute. I didn't, got a little makeup on, got a little cute outfit on. He comes out his room. He got some basketball shorts. I'm like, we are not on the same page here. So I think that prompted a conversation for me just to know, like, okay, does he like me or am I just tripping? So I remember us having a conversation about whether we liked one another. And as the summer progressed, like we said, we were at summer projects. So we're kind of in this bubble. And so I think we started to have conversations about boundaries outside of summer project. Because at that time, I had taken a year off from dating. I saw that dating and the opposite sex became an idol for me in my walk with the Lord. So I wanted to take some time away from that to get to know myself, get to know what should I even be looking for when I'm ready to date. And so I read a book, got some. There was a woman that was kind of my mentor that was discipling me and speaking into my life, and like, girl, you need to focus on, something else. And so we had a conversation like, okay, if you're not dating, what does our relationship look like outside of this project?
What was your response, Carrie?
I mean, I feel like when we were talking about if we're not dating, right then, I think I just felt like, well, we can just be around each other. Like there's no pressure here. I don't think I ever applied pressure about dating. Cause for me, like, once again, like this was my first time dating. Honestly, I hadn't dated in high school, middle school, anything like that. So for me at this point, I'm not in a rush to be in a relationship. Like I'm still trying to figure myself out at this point, and college is a completely different terrain for me. So I just respected the decision, and also thought like, okay, cool. Like whenever you're ready, we can discuss this again. But there's no pressure to do anything moving forward. Like I respect your decision about being single for a year or however much time you need, and no pressure.
Nice. Okay. So Julia, during this year and you getting to know yourself, what did you find out or learn about yourself that made you ready for actually considering being in a relationship with him?
I think one of the biggest things was just like growing in my relationship with the Lord, building community, having people that could speak into my life and hold me accountable to who I said I was, and not being pulled in different directions. And I would also say taking time to figure out what I would want in a partner, and coming to the realization that if I'm going to date, I need to be dating with the intention of marriage. I don't want to just aimlessly date. And also going into that, how do I also have boundaries instead of convictions? My mom always taught me that before getting into a situation and getting your emotions involved, know what you're going to tolerate and how you're going to handle certain things. And so for dating, I wanted to be able to set up different convictions and know what I am and am not going to do when I enter into a relationship.
Nice. Nice. So Carrie, at this time, are you, living life just as norm, or are you doing things to, work on self as well?
I think that is my normal. I'm a very like I internalize a lot. I self-reflect a lot because I am an only child. And so like I didn't and my parents are like older. So like I'm always kind of like at this point in my life, just kind of self-reflecting and thinking about progressing. I will be honest, like dating was not on my radar. Once we had that conversation, it was like, okay, cool. We're not dating.
We were
And
barely friends when school started.
yeah, and really with school, I just like made it my full focus. My mom was really in my ear about like doing really well in school, and I just felt a lot of like not necessarily pressure, but I just understood like why she was being so urgent with her message about doing well in school, because we didn't have the best life. We did struggle a lot financially when I was growing up, especially after my parents divorced. So for me, college was basically make or break. And dating had been so far removed from my life at this point, it just really wasn't on my mind. The only thing on my mind was establishing stability for myself, and being able to create a future for myself outside of the one that I knew when I was under my parents' roof. So yeah, it didn't. I wasn't thinking about dating at all. I was already thinking about like how I'm gonna get a job, internships. Where's my major gonna look like? How many hours do I need to study a day to prepare for classes, scholarships, studying abroad? Like my mind was just thinking about my check, honestly. So I didn't. I really wasn't too concerned about that. And I met two guys that were in this ministry that we're talking about who were kind of like mentoring me. And I was also really focused on that because, like I said, I didn't have the best relationship with my dad. So to have two men that are actually like paying attention to me and invested in my development, like spiritually and just like as a man, like from two Black men too, that I was able to trust, that really became like my focus. So I just dating just kind of like left my space of reference.
I can remember after project, texting Carrie and not hearing back for like days. I'd be like, dang, I guess he doesn't like me anymore. And he just had to tell me like, one, you said you weren't dating, so we shouldn't be talking a lot as if we are. And two, I'm focused on school, so I'm keeping you over. You're over here. So it was an interesting time.
Yeah, I was like sleeping in the library. So like,
Wow.
I really just wasn't.
He was intense in college.
It just wasn't on my mind. Like once we had that conversation, I was like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're in this twilight zone. Julia's doing her thing, aligning herself with where she needs to be so she can set her boundaries. Carrie is intense, getting his paper, got his plan together. When do you collide again?
So I think Julia takes her year off from dating, and she's like, "Oh, I think I'm ready now." I think that we have a conversation like somewhere in the midst of that, like after you take your year off.
Yes.
You're like, "I think I'm ready now," and then I'm like, "Well, I'm not ready."
Mm-hmm.
So then I take a year off, and I'm like, "No, school is like I'm not ready to date." I know, I don't have the emotional capacity to even support thinking about a relationship right now. Like I got way too much going on. I got family stuff going on. I got school stuff going on. I got
health
stuff going on, obligations. I'm trying to do student leadership and stuff to kind of like make a name for myself on campus. Like, I'm just gonna be honest, I don't have time for this to even consider it right now.
It wasn't harsh or anything like that. We had a conversation. And I think even for me, I knew when communicating with Carrie that I was ready, that he wasn't ready. And so I had this conversation with the Lord. I'm like, Lord, if this is who I'm really supposed to date, he's going to communicate that he's not ready. Because I didn't think Carrie had the capacity to truly date because he was so focused on school. But he did tell me, I'm not asking for you to wait to date me until I'm ready. He's like, I'm not putting you on layaway and just expecting you to stay there. Like, if there's a godly man that's interested in you and you want to see where that goes, like, do what's best for you.
Yeah. Did you date?
I got to know a couple of people.
That's code for yes.
Okay.
I did.
Okay. Well, it's obvious that it didn't work, so it doesn't matter.
No, they didn't. My eyes were already set on Carrie. So even though I got to know other people, he was still who I wanted to be with.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Carrie. So no, I'm not even. And let me say this, because I don't know if you hear this often, because I know it is a norm that I hear that Black men are emotionally unavailable and they don't have the capacity to say that. So let me just stop and pause and say, I appreciate and applaud your ability to communicate to this woman where you were, how you were feeling, what you could and could not do. Yeah. That speaks volumes to you as a person.
Yeah, I'd have to chuck it up to my mom. I think my mom is a very straightforward, straight shooter type woman. And also just kind of like the household I was raised in, where I saw like how relationships are definitely not supposed to go. And my mom never said she was perfect. So I think because of the close relationship I had with my mom, I had a better understanding of how to take like internal review myself internally and kind of reflect and be like, no, I don't have the capacity for this. Or like, she was very keen on like how to treat a woman or how she thought a woman would want to be treated. And because she's such a force in my life, I definitely saw that with how I treat other women, whether I was going to date them or not. So
that's beautiful. That's beautiful. Okay. So we still have not made it to where when, how, what happened? You took a year off. You said, no, pump your brakes. What happened?
We did another summer project where this time when we went, we were
student leaders.
So we were still hanging out. We were definitely a challenging summer on all fronts, spiritually, trying to like lead people that are the same age as us. It was very interesting. I think at the end of that summer, Carrie felt like he may have been ready. So I think he took a week. It was a week or two that you didn't talk to me after summer project.
Yep, 2 weeks.
He said he was going to take time not talking to me to determine if he was ready, get wise counsel. And during that 2 weeks, I did the same of speaking with the person that was mentoring me, saying, hey, like, do you think this is something I'm ready for? If he does, ask me, and what should I do? How do I move, forward? So and he was intense about like not talking to me. Like after church, I remember one day there was like this hangout spot we would go to at someone's house. And I remember knocking on the door and Carrie saw it was me and like didn't even answer the door. He like tried to steer clear of me so that he could have a clear mind to determine if he was ready to date.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so Carrie, in your 2 weeks, and I'm sure you prayed and you sought your wise counsel, when did it rest in your spirit that Julia is the one.
Was it
Yeah.
the pros and cons list?
Yeah, it's the pros and cons list, which she hates, by the way. So one of my mentors basically, he just broke it down to me. Like I prayed, but for him, like one of the guys I was mentoring, he's like, you're kind of overcomplicating it. Like at this point, you know as much as you are really going to know. Y'all have been around each other for quite some time, and he was close to her too.
Mm-hmm.
So she's close to this man as well. And so he was like, yeah, I definitely think that if you're going to date somebody, that would be a good person to date. And so he was like, you just need to make a pros and cons list. And so that's what I did. I made my pros and cons list, and I was just like, and I had been around campus. I had been in student leadership. I had seen, other women on campus. I wasn't dating, but I was just like observing. And once I made my list, I was like, man, I really don't think it's going to get any better than this. Like, I think this is like, not to say that I'm settling, but I think Julia is like really like the upper echelon of women that I would be able to, have the pleasure of dating and being able to have a relationship with. And so I did my list, and I just had to really say, like, are the cons outweighing the pros of what this, and do I actually want a relationship? Because for a while there, I think one of the things I was struggling with is like, do I actually want to get in a relationship? And we have similar people who are mentoring us and dating to get married. So it's like, do I even want to get married? Because like I said, I came out of a household that, wasn't good. The marriage wasn't good. My parents being together wasn't good. I actually looked forward to my parents getting divorced. I was like, y'all need to get divorced. So I'm like, I don't know how much of that's going to come with me, of how toxic that was. Is that going to be my future? Is that what my marriage is going to look like? So I had to really do a lot of like thinking about that. But once I got over that hump and I realized like what they had doesn't have to look like what I will have, or what I want doesn't necessarily have to, be a reflection of what my parents' marriage was like or relationship was like. I thought, okay, yeah, this is something I want to pursue. And so that's what made me go ahead and take the steps to, pursuing Julia to date her.
Nice. I want to jump straight to Julia, what was the proposal like?
Okay, so I was living in a house down the street from Carrie with some of my friends. And one of them gives me this envelope. And it's from Carrie asking me to like meet him, or he says he's going to pick me up the next morning. And it's like 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock in the morning. It's a summer morning. And so that next morning I get up, Carrie comes over. He drives us to Shelby Farms.
Mm-hmm.
He has breakfast for us and his Bible. And he asked me to be his girlfriend. And so I said yes. And during that time at the park, we sat down and like wrote out what would be our convictions for dating.
Yeah.
We didn't always see eye to eye on what those convictions would look like.
Yep.
One of them, we said we wouldn't kiss. We said we wouldn't hang out by ourselves past like a specific time and things of that nature. So we set up those convictions from the beginning. Did we always uphold them? No, we're human, we're flawed. But we did do our best to stick to those convictions while dating. We didn't date in isolation. So we had community and people. There were people that I would talk to. There were people that Carrie would talk to that would hold us each accountable, because we both wanted to have a relationship that was pleasing to the Lord.
So how long did you date before he proposed marriage?
3 years.
3 years.
3 years. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And so how long have you been married?
Be 6 in October.
Yep.
6 in October.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's so exciting. So how do you all handle conflicts in your home?
Oof, that is evolved.
It has evolved. our communication has definitely gotten better. I think our first year of marriage, it definitely took time for us to really get to know one another better. Like, we dated for 3 years. And so I tell people all the time, like, there weren't any big surprises once, like, moving in with Kerry and doing life with him. However, there was still time that we needed to get to know each other and better communicate. And so for conflict, we don't have a lot of like big conflict. I think we'll have like little stuff, like I'll do something that annoys him and will irritate him. And I think sometimes we'll take a couple hours, I would say, to kind of process things. I always want to take time before stating how I feel about something to check myself. Like, is this really how I feel? Before I, communicate this, I try to be very careful with my words. And so when there is conflict, we take time, not a lot of time, but we do take time to process things on our own and then come back together.
Yeah, I would say a lot of the conflict that we experienced earlier is just kind of like me having a jerk reaction to something I disagree with Julia about, and me not really giving it enough time to think about it from her perspective or what she actually meant about that. And a lot of it just came down to like giving her the benefit of the doubt. Like, this is not somebody who would try to harm me or wouldn't try to look out for my best interests. And I'm just having this visceral reaction to something because it doesn't sit well with me on like first listen or first glance. And so I've had to do a lot of like, breathing, like give it like 15 to 20 seconds before I let something fall out my mouth, or I watch my tone about how I respond to what she's saying, because that would escalate it. I'm realizing that I'm escalating something because now I'm being offensive in my approach or aggressive to like my verbal tone. And she'll be like, hold on. And then that would just turn into something else. So I think for me, I should say, I just had to really give Julia a lot of the benefit of the doubt and like really go back to like, okay, do you trust her or you don't trust her? Like, that's what it's coming down to. Like, no, she's not perfect. You aren't perfect either, but you got to believe when she's saying something to you, even if you don't agree with it. Why did you get with her if you're going to just have like these reactions where just because you don't understand it first, or if you don't understand it all, you're going to completely be dismissive of it, or, just try to get her to, have a discussion with her where she doesn't feel like she can broach the situation ever again, or doesn't feel comfortable doing so. So I think it took a lot of just like, let me think about this. Let me breathe around it. And it's not, I don't want to give the impression like I'm an aggressive, or being egregious in how I approach conversations, but it's just not being reactionary, and just kind of having this, giving myself the space to like, if I need to go for a walk or if I need to sit on it and say, okay, look, give me a second to think about it. She's cool with that. And that helps a lot too. Nice. And we just don't operate in silos. I feel like for us, that was also another thing, like that could cause conflict, like, especially like with finances. Like, first couple of years of our marriage, Julia was completely overseeing finances, which I'm not saying that she can't, but it was just kind of like, oh, that's Julia's thing. She has it. And I didn't put any skin in the game regarding like checking in with her and trying to understand how we budget. And so things come up, of course, that's just life. And then I'm like, wait, what happened? Why did, then that's when the reactions come. So just also being like, okay, Kerry, you have to team up with her. You have to partner with her. You can't just, it's not a chore. Finances are not a chore. Like, I do the kitchen, she does the laundry. Okay, cool. Those are chores we can separate, but finances is not something I can operate in a silo with Julia. So yeah, I also have to realize that.
I love it. I love it. So what advice would you give a young couple trying to decide if they should date, wanting to date intentionally for marriage, but again, this world and social media and everything else does not condone, I consider it, being patient, taking care of yourself, checking in with wise counsel to make sure this is really what you want to do. And Julie, you made a very beautiful point about relationships and having someone being your idol, taking away from, actually taking care of yourself to make sure that you're a good partner for somebody. So what advice would you share?
I think that's really good. I think, well, first, my mom, when I was even thinking about dating, my mom knew I had a really bad relationship with my father, of course. And so she always told me, like, Carrie, before you go date someone, you need to go to therapy. And this is like, her side of the family is like, most of them are not, both my family in general is just not like a therapy kind of family. So my mom is already kind of just like different in the fact that she's embracing me talking to a therapist, and me being able to think clearly and take care of my mental health. So I would say, like, couples need to make sure as individuals that they're healthy, because I think that's a large part of our journey. We were making sure that we were healthy individually before we tried to come together. Neither one of us were in a rush or thirsty for a relationship. In fact, girls that I used to like in high school, I would be turned off from if they got in one relationship and then they broke up, the guy or the girl broke up with her, or they broke up, and then the next day I find out that they're in another relationship. I'd be like, oh, okay, never mind. I don't even care about that. And that's a lot in college too. And I think the other thing is that, like, a lot of people say, like, I don't want people in my business, which I can understand. You don't want the wrong people in your business. But the guys that were mentoring me and guys that were close to my circle were definitely in my business. Like, they helped me maintain my walk with the Lord and help Julia maintain her walk with the Lord. And that was chief to us. Like, we want to make sure that the Lord is glorified in how we engage with one another, whether we're dating or not. So I think we kept the Lord at the center. We tried to make sure that each one, and from my perspective, we kept the Lord at the center. We tried to make sure that we were healthy individually, and we had the right people in our business who could just ask us, no matter how uncomfortable the question was. And actually, one of the guys that was mentoring me, that she was really close to, like, he was actually really hard on me, not in an abusive way, but just like, hey, that's my sister. Don't play. I'm not playing with you about her. And so just like him being in my life and him caring about me also, and me not telling him, like, no, that's not none of your business, but actually being like, yeah, you're right. Like, I do need to check myself on that, or I do need to consider it like that. I think that helped us a lot.
Yeah. I think definitely being comfortable with who you are, knowing what you bring to the table, because sometimes we can focus on what that other person should be, like you mentioned before, but not focus on, are we a good partner? Because one thing marriage will do is amplify all of your issues, because it's not just you anymore. You're doing life with another human being. So just making sure you're in a place to date and be married, and knowing that it is hard, and there does have to be grace. And at the end of the day, it's a partnership. Y'all are on the same team, so there has to be constant communication and check-ins. And I tell Carrie all the time, I'm very thankful that the Lord blessed me to marry my best friend, because, like, literally, like, this is my best friend. We will cackle all night long about the silliest things. When there's an issue, he's who I'm calling. So it's very important to be with somebody that you genuinely like being around and doing life with.
Nice. Yep. I'm gonna put another plug in here, Carrie. I just did Julia tell? I don't know. She probably didn't, but you were dropping her off to come to an event that we were doing. And again, I'm a relationship watcher. That's just what I do. You watched her until she got up those stairs to the door, and I was like, "Come on!" When I walked in the door, I asked her. I said, "Is that your husband?" And I again, it's one of those things that doesn't happen much these days. So again, I love how you all move together. I can tell that, again, you all genuinely enjoy being in each other's company, and that is absolutely beautiful. So I thank you so much for sharing. You all how old are you all? May I ask?
29.
29. You all have a wealth of wisdom, whether you know it or not. The things that you have just shared will probably help couples who are my age and older. So thank you for being willing to share. Know that you are individually and collectively in my prayers.
Thank
you.
you.
And I hope and pray that you all have years and years and years and years and years and years to come.
Thank you so much, Angela, for this opportunity.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You all take care and have a wonderful evening, okay?
You as well. Bye.
Bye-bye. Again, thank you, Johnson, so much for sharing that love story. I do truly love when people find what works for them, and to hear two young people intentionally doing the work on themselves to come together as two whole individuals, healthy individuals, then coming together, setting boundaries together to become one individual is beautiful. It's beautiful. It has, again, people have a tendency to always want to add these extra adjectives about what they think and what they believe and what they do. But over those airways, their love reached me. And so that's the part that's important. The foundation that they've built their relation on is solid, and so again, I mean exactly what I said. I hope to be talking to them at their 60th wedding anniversary, doing another interview. So I hope that inspires some of you out there in relationships, taking note. Again, I've been pushing about listening to these young people and listening to them because they're figuring it out. So if you are in a relationship and you're not talking and you're not communicating and you're not taking time for yourself, I hope that you took note of what these young people are doing. And if you are seeking a relationship, making sure that you are seeking wise counsel and not trying to figure this out on your own, because you do have a tendency to think that you have to have a partner and think that there's something wrong with you if you're not in a relationship. The best relationship that you need to have is with your higher power and with yourself. If you don't have a connection here, then you might not be ready to be in a relationship with someone else, because you're going to be depending on them to be your source. And that is not how we're designed. That is not what we're here for. We are here to be partners in this thing. I like how they said they are doing life together. So I hope you enjoyed the show. I will see you next Thursday. Peace, love, and relationships. I'll see you next week.